Okay, everyone, welcome to Search Strategies for a Social and Behavioral Science Literature Review. I am V. Dozier, Education Librarian and Assistant Professor here at USD. My email is listed and I will pop it into the chat for you as well, because that is the best way to reach me. And when we talk about literature reviews, these are incredibly popular in the social and behavioral sciences for quickly giving your reader a thorough analysis of the existing body of literature concerning your topic. Your literature review does not always answer your research question. There are literature reviews that you can publish that answer their own research question. So in that case, if I were publishing a literature review and I want to know what has been said about self-care for women of color in the last 20 years, what are the trends? Okay, that's something that a literature review can address. And there are many different types of literature reviews, and there are many types that are popular among the social and behavioral sciences. That's systematic reviews, meta-analysis, historical literature reviews are incredibly popular in the social and behavioral sciences, okay? You can also have a literature review that in most cases, as you would see at USD and in other social and behavioral science courses, you're going to see that the literature review helps set up the purpose of your research. Okay. So if you are talking about, let's say your research question deals with what are the strategies for positive behavior intervention in a virtual learning environment. Okay. So while that may be your research question, your literature review would actually address the existing scholarly conversation about positive behavior interventions and remote learning environments. Typically, people look for literature reviews to address the gap in research so that when you're answering your research question, you can say, the existing body of conversation covers this. My research is going to add to the body of scholarly literature because there's a gap in the research. But that is not always the case. A literature review does not have to specifically look for a gap in the conversation. What your research may do is address trends, like I said. It could address a gap. You could actually just be looking to analyze an existing body of literature. So there are different ways that we can use literature reviews. On the screen, I wanted to have a quick rundown about specific research query help that we use and people assume that we know about, called Boolean terms. Okay. And what these are really just connectors that when we use them for our search queries, they help tell the system what to do and how we want our search to be conducted. Well, there are three major Boolean terms, and you'll see these across the various interfaces, platforms, databases that we are going to kind of go through. You're going to see and, which connects search lines or phrases together. And when I talk about phrases, I mean the terms that are together separated by a Boolean term. Sometimes the parentheses are imaginary, but the system will operate as if they are there. What the parenthetical phrases do is kind of groups the search terms so that the system knows, okay, we need to see if these appear together or near each other. So there are different ways that we can do that. And a simple way of thinking about how and helps us in a search is by saying, we are looking for apples and oranges. I want all the results that mention apples and oranges. A lot of the resources that we're going to use default to rank the results by relevancy. So the results that you should see first are the ones that have apples and oranges in the most frequency. And they're going to count up the number of times that your terms appear. And though that's how your results are going to be ranked. Or increases the potential number of results because people use synonyms or like phrases for different terms. Okay. And this is one way we can use or to create more complex search queries that are more thorough across the existing body of literature. For example, if I'm looking at a racial or ethnic group as my population, then I want to use all of the relevant and appropriate names that that race or ethnicity may use. Because in some literature, you may see a person referred to as Black. In other literature, you may see a person referred to as African American. But when I'm conducting a search query, I want to make sure that just like if I said apples or oranges, which is going to increase the number of potential results, I want to say I'm looking for results that have Black or African American, because that population could be referred to as both. Not is one that I use the least. I use and or primarily. Not helps reduce unwanted results. And this one is particularly helpful if a term is used across different disciplines. So let's say, I have a paper, I'm discussing fruit, but really my paper is discussing different types of apples. But because I put in the search term fruit, I'm getting a bunch of results about oranges that I don't want. Instead of drawing up a whole new search query, I can add a line that says not oranges to reduce the number of results that have oranges in it. And you're primarily going to use and or not so much. I wanted to give you a visual for how I think through going from topic to search terms and what I mean by those synonyms or like phrases. And just as a heads up, many of the resources that we're going to talk about today operate with the helper text like Google has. And it's going to help you try and figure out what terms you want to use. I'm also going to show you how you can use the search, the subject list, and the thesauri that are embedded within these databases that will also help you figure out terms you can use to find the resources you're looking for. When we have a topic, our topic is the general just the general umbrella for what we're interested in. The topic is important for our literature review because these are typically the variables that we need to address in the existing body of literature. So in my example here, I drew up a topic of BIPOC women in higher education and self-care. That's my topic. I have a population that I'm interested in. I have a location or environment that my population exists in, and we have an issue of concern. Bang, bang, boom. Your research question is really where you start to define your variables and how those variables interact with each other and what you are interested in about those variables. You can have more than one research question. You may have an overarching research question and then multiple sub-questions. You may have two overarching research questions or more. Depends on how big your project is. Remember, they should flow pretty easily. If you were to place them in a chart, your chart should make sense, especially when you are addressing a literature review. So we have a topic, BIPOC women in higher education and self-care, but what I'm interested in researching are what strategies are BIPOC women at PWIs using to engage in self-care. You can see that I use similar terms, but I'm also starting to be more specific. So I went from the term of higher education, but now I'm specifically saying I'm looking at PWIs, predominantly white institutions, which further narrows the location of where I'm interested in conducting my research. And I've added strategies because I'm not just interested in self-care generally, I'm interested in self-care strategies that these women engage in. And this may lead to other questions, but I just wanted to do a quick breakdown for our workshop today. So from the research question and the topic, I can start to break these into search terms that I'm thinking of. What terms can I use in the resources that I know to help me find research or that existing body of scholarly communication to address these? Does that mean that my answer is already out there? Maybe. And where can I fit in and add to the conversation? That's for later. But right now, I want to find that existing body of conversation. And I break search terms down in a more specific way so that I can make sure that my search query is incredibly organized and I can see exactly where I might need to modify things. Okay. For instance, when I look at the acronym BIPOC, well, I'm not just going to search for BIPOC because this is an acronym for multiple groups. So I may also include race or ethnicity terms. I might also use phrases like people of color and include those separated by the Boolean term or, so I can maximize the number of results that I'm receiving for this search term group. And then consider this space in between the search terms as and. I want all of these things together. When I look at the term women, female, strategies, strategy, activity, intervention, treatment. There are many terms that we could use. And then with PWI, notice that I included PWI. I could also use the term predominantly white institution, but I also included higher ed because sometimes it's referred as that, college, university. We could keep it going. And we could do the same thing for self-care. So in the chat, I would like you to take the term self-care and add any like phrases or synonyms that you think would be appropriate to add to the self-care group. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Self-care is one word, and that brings up an interesting point. For the same reason we are, bringing these synonyms and like terms, you will also see different forms of words. So you might see healthcare as 2 words, healthcare as 1 word. You might see self-care hyphenated, or you might see self-care as 2 separate words. The more that you can think of that will help you access that scholarly literature that you're looking for, that's going to increase your ability to find those results if you can think of more terms. And again, these databases are, have tools that are going to help you figure these out. Let's add some of our suggestions here to our chart, and then I'm going to demonstrate a search for you. Now on the PowerPoint, and yes, I will send a copy of the PowerPoint out to you. I'm including, some suggestions for spaces that you can start searching that is appropriate for social and behavioral sciences literature reviews. This is by no means an exhaustive list. Copley has over 180 databases that we subscribe to, and you have access to all of them. And depending on your topic, where you concentrate your search may be different, okay? And I included a picture here of the major search box that's on the Copley website with the databases area highlighted. And that's because if you are conducting graduate level, professional level research, you are probably going to spend most of your time in the databases. Okay? Not in the catalog, which is where we would search for items that Copley owns. Not in Catalog Plus, which is where you're searching for items that Copley owns, plus some results from some databases that we subscribe to. Is it enough for graduate level research? No. Okay. You're not going to get enough scholarly results from Catalog Plus to suffice for graduate level research. Will it get you started? Yes. But you're going to spend most of your time in the databases, and you may find yourself spending quite a bit of time in the journals. If you know that there's a journal, or if you discover in the course of your searching that there's a journal appropriate for your discipline or your topic, then you may concentrate your efforts to particular journals. Should you start out here in the journals? No. Okay, I do not recommend that. And it's usually because if people start in the journals, they don't know how to pull back out into the larger databases. And then they have a reference list that's like 20 articles from one journal. Now, in some cases, if it's a really niche topic and there's only one or two specific journals that talk about this topic, then that may be appropriate. But for most of the research topics and research questions that I hear happening around higher ed and in the social and behavioral sciences, that is an exception, not the rule. Okay. You are going to have a much more thorough literature review if you search in multiple spaces. These LibGuides are also developed for you. They are librarian curated resource guides to help get you started on your research, okay? So those are listed for you. Now, let's go to the website. All right, I'm gonna go into the databases because that's where I'm directing you to search. If you want to play around with searches in Catalog Plus or the catalog or in journals, cool. But for the purposes of this workshop, we're going to concentrate on the databases so that you can see how beneficial they can be for you. Now, I'm very familiar with these databases, so I can usually just find them by title, the ones that I want. But we also have categorize them by subject areas to make it a little bit easier for you to find the database that you're interested in. I recommend that you start your search in a multidisciplinary database like Academic Search Premier or JSTOR. And this is going to help you cover a lot of areas. So for my topic, is an education topic, of course. So I'm going to start in Academic Search Premier. And one of the reasons I do this is because Academic Search Premier is a multidisciplinary database, and it is on the EBSCOhost platform. When I see the EBSCOhost logo, I know that Copley subscribes to multiple databases on the EBSCOhost platform. All of these we subscribe to. And the way that the platform works is that I can search multiple databases at one time. Why is this super helpful for literature reviews? Well, one, it helps me save time because I can use one search query across multiple databases. This helps me to be more thorough in where I'm searching for that existing body of conversation, and I'm saving time. You could select all of these if you want to. It's not going to harm your search. What I tend to do, because I'm so familiar with these databases, is that I will choose the ones that are related to my topic. Now, I'm going to model how I think through, based on my topic and research question, how I choose my databases. My research question was, what strategies are BIPOC women at PWIs using to engage in self-care? Based on that topic, I know that I'm going to need the education databases. And if you are unfamiliar with any of these, just hover over the little scope note and it'll tell you what that database houses. Okay, I know I'm going to need the education ones. I'm already in a multidisciplinary database. Let's see. May also include family studies abstracts. Because I'm talking about self-care, I want to include some health and nursing databases. Anytime I'm talking about behavior, I want to include psych articles, psych info. Anytime we're talking about cultures or environments, I want to bring in that sociology, anthropology aspect as well. Keys research abstracts, again, for that same self-care. And to be inclusive in my research, because remember, we could have transgender women, we could have those who identify with the MXN. So I want to make sure that I'm picking up all of the resources I can to be inclusive in my searching. And where is, that's enough for now. We can start with this search. Okay. The basic search is basic. But if I use the basic search, I would have to build in manually all of those Boolean terms. And we want to build a more complex search query. Instead of using basic search here, use the advanced search feature. And as you see, you have multiple lines that you can use. Your Boolean terms are going to be over here. You also have the option to search in specific fields. I would not recommend you start by limiting to a specific field. I tend to keep it very broad and let my results tell me where I need to refine my search query. If you are interested in looking for specific terms, you could check out the subject lists that are housed in various databases that you've chosen. So for example, if I wanted to look up the term self-care in one of these databases, I could say the term contains the words self-care. And the subject list and the thesaurus give us terms for like how librarians categorize this information. So the controlled vocabulary. I'm looking for patient self-care. It tells me what I could use instead of just the general self-care. Self-care looks appropriate for what we're trying to do today. So I could click on this and it would give me even broader terms, more narrow terms, or related terms, plus a scope note about how this term is being used. You could click on these and add them to your search if you wanted to, and that's completely fine to do. I just wanted to show you that option. I'm going to go back to advanced search, quickly do a search. Okay. Again, it acts like Google. I'm just going to pick here. If I need to add a line, I can do so. I can also modify these to add terms that I'm interested in. I can use different limiters if I wanted to. Like I said, I tend to keep it broad and add limiters later. $714 results. What I do at this point, remember I'm searching for my literature review. I'm going to quickly scan the first 10 to 20 results and see if they have the level of relevance that I am looking for pertaining to my research question and my topic. Okay. That one looks great. This one looks pretty good. Work-life balance may be a term that I'm interested in using. Ooh, that one looks great too. Okay, so notice that as I was kind of scrolling through, I'm looking for the terms that I use. And I'm also looking for other terms I could use to help narrow down my results to what I'm specifically interested in. Okay. So if I were to keep going with this search, I could refine and say, look for self-care as a subject term. Here. Okay. That may give me fewer results. It's going to change the relevancy of the ranking. But if I need to go back to a search ever, during this temporary session, let me be clear about that. If you leave this window open for more than like 15, 20 minutes, it's going to time out. So make sure that you grab your search query and you grab your permalink for this search. The permalink is how you're able to get back to this search any point, and it is dynamic. So if somebody publishes something, 2 days from now, your results might say 369 instead of 367. Okay. So you can take this same search to show you. Actually, I want to grab this one. You can take this same search and apply it to a place like Google Scholar, which is going to make your Google Scholar results a lot better because you now have a more complex query. We got 39 results instead of the 500,000 that we usually get from Google Scholar. You could go into other databases or platforms like the ones that I've recommended for you. I want to show you real quick one, like Taylor and Francis. And you may have to modify this search a little bit in order to make it work in another database. Like you may have to capitalize the Boolean term. You do the same thing here. And I know that in Taylor and Francis, I need to capitalize the Boolean terms, but for the sake of today, I'm not going to do that. I just want to show you that once you have a good working search query, you can use it in multiple spaces to find resources. Part of your work in graduate and professional study is that you need to know where you need to go. If you don't, that's when you contact me.